Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the Atheist Experience. I'm your host, Matt Dillahunty. Joining me this week is Jeff D.
Hi, I'm Matt.
How you doing?
Good, you?
I'm good. Little frazzled. I got here early and everything. The time just flew. But we're ready to get started and have a good show. As a reminder, we're live. It's October 22nd, 2006. This program is sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. The ACA has weekly meetings every Sunday at Romeo's at 11:30. Romeo's is located on Barton Springs Road, and that's every Sunday except for the third Sunday of the month when we host a lecture series at the Austin History Center located at the corner of 9th and Guadalupe. Today was the lecture. Don Baker did our lecture today. I wasn't there, so I can't report on it, but the next lecture, we've gotten a thumbs up from the studio audience, so good job to Don. Next month's lecture, I don't know that we have any information about who's going to be giving it, but there is a special meeting next month, which would normally be our board meeting, which occurs the second Sunday of the month. On that Sunday, which is November 12th, I believe, instead of going to Romeo's, we'll be going out to Ventana del Sol. I'd like to get all the ACA members out there to give us some feedback and interact with us about what we're going to be doing over the coming year and checking out Ventana del Sol as a possible venue for us. More information is available on the website www.atheist-community.org. In addition to this program, which gives the ACA the chance to interact with the public and answer questions and discuss issues, the ACA also sponsors a bi-weekly internet audio podcast, which we do live along with the chat room, called The Nonprofits. That's Prophets. That's hosted by Jeff D., co-hosted by Dennis Lubay, features Russell Glasser and myself. We were live yesterday and covered a lot of topics.
And you did great.
Thanks.
Because I couldn't make it.
Yeah, not because you couldn't make it.
I'm making a point of saying you did great because it was all you guys, and you did a fine job.
We had fun.
Yeah,
but
I was in the chat room. You never reacted to anything that I said.
I was kind of busy. But
yeah,
the podcast for that's available from our website, and also it's got its own website, nonprofitsradio.com, and the audio portion of this broadcast is available for download from the Atheist Community website as well. And because of that, we get a lot of email and communication from around the world, people who are discovering one or both of the shows and asking us questions and providing feedback and suggestions and everything else. We greatly appreciate it. We can't answer all of them, of course, and in some cases I'll probably direct you to another resource that might answer your question, including the FAQ at our website. But we do appreciate all the mail, good, bad, or otherwise. And anybody who doesn't get through on the telephone today or doesn't want to can email tv@atheist-community.org. That goes to everybody involved with this program, both in front of the camera and behind the scenes. So if you have concerns about technical issues or if you're in the Austin area, want to get involved with the ACA, possibly get involved and help out with one of the shows, feel free to email there or one of the other email addresses and contact information from our website. In addition to the lecture and the shows and the morning meetings, the ACA also has a number of social events scheduled at different times. We have a weekly happy hour, which is currently at Ninfa's Mexican restaurant on Anderson. That's Thursday at 7:30. We don't know how late it goes. Depends on how many people show up and how long we want to talk, but you can get some dinner, have something to drink, meet some of the ACA folks. As with all of our events, it's open to any atheist or atheist-friendly person. You don't have to be a member to attend. We've had Christians show up at our events before. We've had people who are non-committal, strict agnostics, and whatever. Just as long as you're not coming down to preach or proselytize, you're welcome to come. We have had people come down to actually debate an issue, and as long as it's an amicable, friendly, we're going to get a long debate, then that's great. And as you can see on the screen, if you're watching live, in addition to those events, the folks involved in this show get together and go to dinner at Threadgill's, which is on Riverside at Barton Springs. The show's over at 6 o'clock. We normally get down there around 6:30, and the invitation is open to all of our viewers, just like it is for anything else, any atheist or atheist-friendly people. But if you only want to preach, if you're only coming down to say how wrong we are or how mad you are that we're talking nastily about your pet beliefs, save your ire and pick up the phone. We'll have the number up for you shortly, and you can call in and tell us live on the air exactly why you're right and we're wrong. Also, as a reminder, the blood bank is called, and we as a group try and organize monthly blood donations for anybody who can give. The information I don't think is actually up on the website right now, but we'll get it up. It shouldn't be hard to do. You can look into the Texas Blood and Tissue donation and find out where you can give and when you can give, if possible. And I guess that's it. We've talked about all of our regular and special announcements. So, what do you have?
Hi everybody.
I just dump it all in your lap.
I've got something. I've read this on the show before, but I had a busy week myself this past week with visitors from out of town, and so and there's not a whole lot going on in the news that I find terribly fascinating at this particular moment.
Yeah, one of the emails for the nonprofits yesterday was asking, why aren't you guys talking about intelligent design and creationism in the classroom?
Because it's over.
Yeah.
It's over.
I'm sure there'll be an upswelling at some point, but
the only thing really to report on the creationism front is that state after state after state now is saying no to the creationists.
Yeah.
And that's awesome.
They're voting them off the school boards and coming up with new rules.
So I thought, why not just have some fun? And one of the funnest things to do, I think, as an atheist, is just note the utter hypocrisy of religious people. And one of the finest examples of that comes when you read the Bible and see how many people this supposed God of love and kindness, who cares about all human beings and wants just the best for everyone, how many people he killed according to his own holy book. And not only that, but how many more people he ordered his followers to kill. Now, in the past, I've read this list sort of, to Christians to say, wake up, look what your holy book actually says. And I think I've learned in the time since then that just doesn't work, because most people who follow that religion think, why, yes, God can, murder people whenever he feels like.
Yeah, I brought you into this world, I can take you out.
Yeah, they think that's perfectly okay. We happen to not, and I hope most people of goodwill think that no matter what the conditions are, hauling off and killing people just, because you don't like what they're doing, is not a terribly good thing. So anyway,
I actually make a slight distinction there.
Yeah.
In that it may be true, for example, if there is a super God who created everybody, it may be true that he has an inherent right to destroy his creation.
How would that be?
Well, I mean, in the whole idea of he made it, he can destroy it.
Yeah, I'm not buying it.
But the thing is, you can't give him that right and claim that it's morally correct to do so. He may have some, you could make an argument that he has an authority over that.
You can certainly make an argument, if the God existed, that he might have the power to do that.
Sure.
But I think, you just run yourself a little thought experiment. What if a human being, a human biologist, managed to put together a thinking being by entirely by science and biochemistry? Would he then have the right to just haul off and kill that fella just because he felt like it? I would say no. It seems to me that human rights that's assuming the thing he made was a human. Let me extend that to rights for thinking beings, to include any, potential space aliens who might be out there watching the show. That all thinking beings have basic rights, which include not being just killed by some authoritarian monarch just because the guy feels like it. Anyway, I don't have chapters and verses for these things, but most people out there either have a Bible or can find one at any hotel. I just want to go down the list and give you what the totals are, because I just think this is extremely revealing about the actual nature of the entity which humans and Jews claim to
Humans
worship.
and Jews?
I'm sorry, Christians. Thank you.
I was going to say, which show did I get on today? That was a funny
I was
slip.
thinking aliens, and I got confused. All right, so these are the murders committed personally by the God himself. Everyone in the whole world except for Noah and his family. Lot's wife. All of the people of Sodom and Gomorrah except for Lot, who was considered good because he offered his virgin daughters to a mob of men and then slept with both of them himself later. God burned all the people of Sodom and Gomorrah, according to the Bible. Judah's firstborn son, Ur's brother Onan, the firstborn of all of Egypt, the Pharaoh and all of his army in the Red Sea. Nadab and Abihu were killed by God because he was upset that they made a fire. Some Jews were burned for complaining. A plague was sent against the Jews for being greedy. Another plague was sent to the Jews who gave the chosen land a bad report. That killed 11 of said Jews. Korah and the other Jews who didn't like Moses were killed. 14,700 Jews killed by a plague sent by God, apparently for the hell of it. Many Jews were killed by serpents that God sent. Some unspecified number of Philistines. 50,070 Jews who looked in the Ark of the Covenant. That, I think, is a hilarious one, because if you're like the second Jew in line, you don't look. It's the first guy opens up the box and vaporizes.
They didn't all look in. It was like some looked in and all of them were punished.
Oh, okay.
See, that's the thing
Some of
about
them weren't
this.
even responsible? Probably a vast number of them were not even responsible?
Well,
they were just in the vicinity.
This God doesn't care.
They were caught in the blast.
Yeah, this God doesn't care who's responsible. When it came time to flood the whole earth except for Noah, it didn't matter if there was a baby in some town that might have been innocent, and it didn't matter.
Nabal was killed for scorning David. Uzzah was killed for touching the ark, which he did only because he was trying to keep it from falling.
What a moron. You should have known you can't hurt that thing.
David and Bathsheba's child, killed by God. 70,000 people killed by a pestilence sent by God because David sinned. 102 were killed by fire sent down on Azahiah's men. Bears, at God's command, killed 42 children because they mocked Elisha. God sent lions to kill some invaders. He also killed 185,000 Assyrians and 80,000 more Israelites who were bad for various reasons. Now, again, we are atheists on this show. We don't believe that there's any God in the first place. Some of these people probably did die, and it was just written down in the Holy Book as, credit was given to the God. The point is that the believers in the book believe that God did the things that are credited to him in the Holy Book, and so they follow this monster even though, according to the Holy Book itself, he personally killed more than 399,933 people himself. That is, of course, not counting any of the groups that for which the Bible doesn't give an exact figure, like everybody on earth except for Noah and his family. So that's 399,933 people killed directly by God that the people who wrote the Bible fit to enumerate.
What about the people that God ordered to have?
Oh, well, let me go on.
Oh boy.
Again, according to the Bible, the God killed every man in Shechem, sending Jacob's sons to do it. God ordered 3,000 Jews killed who were worshiping a golden calf. Ordered the death of a man gathering wood on Sunday. Ordered the death of the entire nation of Canaan. The city of Heshbon, taken from the Amorites, a bunch of killing there. All of the people of Bashan, 24,000 Jews who followed Baal. All the Midianites except for its virgin girls.
And there were 32,000 of those virgin girls, according to the Bible.
Now, how big does a city have to be in order to have 32,000 virgin girls?
Funny you should ask, because I actually did all the math on this yesterday for the nonprofit show. In order to come up with an average of about 32,000 teenage girls or virgin girls, and covers from the age 0 to 17, you need a city with a population of a little over 300,000, roughly the number of people who were in the city of Tampa around the year 2000.
Wow.
Minus
its virgin girls of Tampa.
Yeah. Everybody in Tampa who lived in Tampa in the year 2000 who wasn't a virgin girl, kill them all, and that's basically what you've got when they wiped out the Midianites. Was
it standard among the ancient Israelites for young ladies to remain virgins until 17? Where'd you get that figure from?
No, that was the only calculation I could come up with. I gave them the benefit of the doubt. It would have probably, you figure, when I had relatives a couple centuries ago who got married at 13, and we know that the average age for kids to start having sex now is 16. Yeah. We got a bug in the studio. But, giving them the benefit of the doubt, you'd still, obviously if not every girl under 17 would have been a virgin.
Right.
So,
but some old maids
somewhere
that are still virgins at, 40.
Yeah, that was the other thing, is that I'm pretty sure, how would they go about figuring out who was a virgin and who wasn't?
Let's not even go there quite yet. Continuing, everyone in Jericho except for Rahab, who was the hooker who betrayed her city,
God loves hookers at the point.
How do I pronounce this? Achan, and his family, who had nothing to do with it, for stealing. Everyone in the cities of Ai, Makkedah, Libnath, Jarmuth, Gedder, Hormah, Arad, Adullam, Bethel, Tappuah, Hepher, Apheth, Lasharon, Madon, Taznach, Megiddo, Kedesh, Jokneam, Dor, Goyim, Tirzah, and all of the Amorites, all the people in all of those cities killed by this deity, now worshipped by Christians.
And Jews.
The men of Bezek, totaling 10,004. The people of Jerusalem, Sheshai, Ahiman, and Talmai. The people of Zephath, Gaza, Ashkelon, Ekron, and the king of Moab, named Eglon. The army of Sisera, I'm having trouble with these ancient names. The army of Sisera and the men of Karkor. 20 cities destroyed by Jephthah at God's command. They didn't even bother to name those cities in the Bible.
That's interesting, because we talked about Jephthah not too long ago. He cut a deal with God. He basically said, God, if you let me wipe out these 20 cities, I'll sacrifice the first thing that comes out of my house when I get home. And of course, that was his young daughter, his only child. So,
Oh, that would be a human sacrifice.
Yes, as a matter of fact, it was. So there's 20 cities that Jephthah took out based on a bargain of human sacrifice.
But I'm starting to think that, compared to mass murder on the scale of thousands and hundreds of thousands, one human sacrifice sort of pales in comparison. Let me continue. Samson killed 30 men who solved his riddle, the Philistines, and tons of other people when he died. 50,100 men of the tribe of Benjamin, the Ammonites, the Philistines, and the Amalekites. David killed a whole bunch of people at God's command, totaling 331,269. Solomon killed 3 people. There was all of Jeroboam's extended family, all of Baasha's extended family, 450 prophets of Baal, 793,000 Jewish Baal worshippers, 127,000 Arameans, one man who, because he refused to strike a prophet, an unknown number of Moabites, 172 people, including Jezebel, Ahab's sons, Joram, their priests, and their friends.
And their friends' priests.
Thank you. Ahaziah's relatives, numbering 142. All of Baal's followers, and in this case, no number is given, but we can assume the Baal followers already killed in the previous references don't count. Athaliah was killed. Matan, the priest of Baal. 10,002 Edomites and 2 servants. All of the pregnant women in Tirzah.
That's one of the most absurd things I've ever heard. That the Bible would account for, we killed 10,002 Edomites and 2 servants. Rawr! It was a glorious day.
It reminds me of an episode of Blackadder, where Blackadder, they have the war, and Blackadder is lying about how many opponents he slew on the battlefield, and he claims that he slew 50,000 peasants. But they don't count, do they? No, only in the case of a tie. Hezekiah killed 20,000 people. 500,000 Israelites killed one another at the command of God. 50,000 Ethiopians. 23,000 Seirites. Haman's army of 510 people. More of that army, 75,300 people. And we're finally done with the things actually listed in the Bible. That totals, are you ready for this, folks? More than 2,017,956 people ordered killed, according to the Bible, by the God of the Bible. This is not even counting 65 entire cities listed in the Bible as destroyed and their residents slain by order of the God, where they didn't bother to give the exact figures of how many dead. Compare that, if you will, just for contrast. In the entire Bible, you know how many people Satan kills?
Job's kids.
Job's kids. Satan kills Job's children in the Bible. And that's only after God told him that he could.
Bummer.
Which, as far as I'm concerned, means put Job's kids on God's total. So, I don't want to hear any more of this nonsense about this God being a God of peace and love.
Yeah.
If you're still following this monster, I just have to ask you why.
It reminds me, the thing I talked about yesterday with this 32,000 virgins. Basically the story is in Numbers chapter 31. Somebody had emailed to ask me about it because I've talked about the virgins before. In a nutshell, the way the story goes, and you can look it up yourself, Numbers chapter 31. According to the Bible, God tells Moses, hey, it's time for you to go kill these people who have strayed from my truth. And so he sends out his armies to kill them. They kill everybody there, all of the men, and they have this big war, and they wipe them all out. But they bring back all of the women, all of the children, and all of their goods, basically as bounty, as a prize for the war. They get back, and Moses is pissed. Why in the world did you bring back the women? The women are the ones who let them...
God is pissed?
No, Moses is pissed.
Okay.
Why did you bring back the women? The women are the reason these men strayed from God in the first place. Go out there and kill all those women. Kill all of the men, the children that you haven't killed already. Kill all of them, everything except for the virgins, of which there ends up being 32,000 of them. Now, the average fundamentalist preacher who's forced to give a sermon on this, because most of them don't voluntarily give a sermon on this, although sometimes they do. I've seen some wacky stuff in some churches. But the mentality, the excuse, the rationalization for all of this is that the men had it coming. They deserve to die because they turned away from God, and that's God's right to kill them. Although why he doesn't want to get his hands dirty, so his in this situation and in others is a little confusing. But the fundamentalist preachers have gone on to say not only did the men deserve it, the women deserved it because they're the ones who led the men away. And the boy children deserved it because the sins of the father are carried on through the sons, that there's some sort of polluted cosmic bloodline that's passed down from Adam through all of the
And that's why to this
line.
very day we think it's just right and proper and just when a man is convicted of murder and executed, that we execute his male children as well.
Sure, or instead. Why not? Let's start doing that.
That's irony, folks. Yeah. We, in fact, don't do that today, do we?
It's patently stupid.
That's because our culture is more moral than this God, as described in the book.
The point that I brought up yesterday was that this story's always bothered me. Even when I was a Christian, it seemed absurd and immoral, and the excuses for it and the justifications for it seem to be some of the most vile rationalizations I could possibly come up with. But what turns my stomach is when the fundamentalist preachers end their sermon with but look at the loving mercy and grace of the great Lord above, who spared all of those young virgins so that they could grow up and live a life knowing the one true God and his infinite passion and love. Meanwhile, the Bible doesn't say they were sex slaves, but come on. Oh, we're going to keep all the young virgins, but they're just going to do our dishes?
Yeah. Why
that's
especially
stupid.
do you want virgins?
The point that I made yesterday was that if this had been just one family, not an entire city the size of Tampa, 300,000 population, if this had been one family, if I went next door because God didn't like my neighbors and because they had turned away, and I killed the father and the mother and their little boy and kept the little girl for myself, I'm pretty sure I'd be lynched inside of a week, especially if I proudly proclaimed this. It's an abomination whether it's one family, or it's an abomination with one family when you increase that scale to huge cities, that these barbarians just wandered around saying, God said we could have your land and we're going to take your women too.
Then it's mass murder on a scale dwarfing what, the Nazi war machine did in World War II.
It's people getting upset about, we talked about Saddam's atrocities in his rape rooms and all the things that he did and everything else. Yeah, I agree. Horrible stuff. And you know what? So is most of the crap that is in this book. And even if you're a liberal believer who doesn't buy into a 6-day literal creation with Jonah and the whale and Noah's Ark and all this other crap, you're still pushing this same book that's full of all these atrocities. But since we're talking a little bit about morality, we ought to go on to our first caller.
Okay.
Who has a question on that subject. So Karen, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Great.
Hi, Karen.
Hi. Hey, I have actually two questions because my son, who you know, has a question too.
Great.
His question, I'll go first because it's a quicker one, I think. Supposedly there was an astronomical event that happened in the sky when Jesus was born, and my son says that he believes that did happen, but it actually happened later, chronologically, than on the date of Jesus' birth. And I wanted to know if either of you know anything about that. And then I do have a morality question.
Do you know anything about
No, I don't. But if he emails me, I can look into it and talk it over because I've heard things about it, but I don't know anything off the top of my head that would account for it. My big thing is that anytime I tend to kind of dismiss it in general because when people talk about these astronomically, it gets twisted into astrology, as in there was something significant. And my thing is, okay, you can claim that two events happened at the same time or that they didn't happen at the same time, but you have to show more than correlation. You have to show some kind of causal tie between the two before it's even relevant in the first place.
You're right.
But,
You're right.
Plus, I think it's important to keep in mind when you hear a naturalistic explanation of some miraculous event in the Bible, right? Like, oh, we know of an actual comet that appeared in the sky at that time. That might be what they're referring to. Well, that's a naturalistic event. That is, by definition, then, not a miracle from the God to mark the birth of Jesus, right? Then you are in the realm of coincidence.
Yeah, and it's also...
even if it's really true.
It's also, let's say a comet did streak across the sky and we know it because we've calculated it. Rather than it being like an omen of something, it's far more plausible that the comet got written into the story as part of the list of events that occurred in the explanation. It's like we talked about yesterday with Kent Hovind. He made predictions based on what the Bible says. Of you would expect these things to occur, and my point was that if evolution is true and we evolved in intellect, then you could also make a prediction that during the formative years of civilization and intelligence and scientific discovery, people who don't know explanations are going to make stuff up that seem to fit. And looking back on it, I mean, if your description of how the Earth came to be is in any way a reflection of the reality that the Earth is, then looking back on it thousands of years later, it can look insightful and true just as it was in that day, even if it doesn't match anything scientifically.
Yeah. Okay, so my original question, thank you for that. My original question was this. A lot of people base the morality of their lives on their religion. Christians do it, and they cite things in the Bible. People cite it for jihad. Polygamists cite it because their interpretation of the Bible says that polygamy is right and is a godly thing to do. And so I'm interested in your views of people that don't have a religion to look to. Is it all based on what is the moral compass that we use to decide how to live our lives? Is it what's best for our community as a whole? And do you think, sort of follow-on question, do you think that if people were to use their own sense of morality and what's just as a moral compass, maybe we would actually be closer in terms of our values than using different religions, which can lead us all over the place? I'm just interested in your views of what's the basis of morality if you don't rely on something external to yourself.
I'll let Jeff dig into that in a second. I just want to make the point that one thing that I've had to do in answering this question before is point out that I don't think religious people necessarily get their morality from their book the way they claim they do. I think they tend to get their morality in much the same way that everybody else does.
And they attribute it to their religion.
Yes. They're happy to use their book to justify what they want to do and what they should do. But it's like, just ask any Christian if they feel that they should be taking their unruly children to the edge of town and stoning them to death. And I think you'll be hard-pressed to find any that say that that's a morally correct thing to do, and yet that's exactly what the Bible, which they claim to believe, would have them do. If that is a definition of their morality, then they're violating it.
So you think that all of us really use our own beliefs and our own life experience or whatever as a basis for it and attribute it to different things, and some people just attribute it to their religion, and you and I attribute it to this makes sense, this is the way I want to live, this is the legacy I want to leave.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. I know Jessica.
I will see you later, and I'll hang up now. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. We'll get to the question. We'll talk to her later. She came to dinner last week, too.
Should I give my comments? I just finished reading the section of Richard Dawkins' new book, the God Delusion, where he addresses this question, and one of the really most powerful things that he has to say on the subject of morality is a reference to a series of studies that were conducted presenting people with moral dilemmas and doing a statistical analysis of how they resolve those moral dilemmas and comparing the responses of people not only from various religions but also atheists. And unfortunately, he names the book in his book, and I don't remember what that is. But
it's a Harvard study that's actually online.
Okay, great. Do you know?
I don't have the website.
Okay,
I can look it up and maybe post the information on our website.
Of course, you can find this information in Dawkins' book. What the study found was that roughly 90% of people agree on a particular resolution to any moral dilemma, no matter what their background is, and no matter what religion they're in, no matter what culture they're from, no matter none of that seems to matter. And the conclusion of that study is that a very large portion of our moral sense is built into us genetically.
And that is part of it. I mean, definitely is something that evolves.
Sure.
Our social interactions and how we determine things. I mean, it's obvious to look at it completely, and you could look at it as a completely utilitarian process, whereas I'm going to try and determine out what's best for me. And in many cases, what's best for me happens to be making sure that what's best for other people also happens. There is a utilitarian view of morality, but I happen to think it goes a lot beyond that.
I agree, right? Yeah. Because it's not enough. The caller asked, maybe we would be better off if we just all relied on our own innate sense of right and wrong. And no, I think that clearly doesn't work because there is a purpose for, say, law enforcement, right? Yeah. There's a purpose for societies to have laws, to write this stuff down, to not leave it open to individual interpretation. The agreement on these moral dilemmas in this study was only around 90%. which leaves a big whopping 10% of people, right, 1 in 10, who saw things differently. There's plenty of use for a socially constructed set of laws and law enforcement and that sort of thing on top of our built-in sense of right and wrong.
Right. It comes down to trying to live and work in a cooperative society.
Right.
And in that society, you sacrifice some of what would be your own freedoms and would be your own personal views on things in order to go along with what the group decides is best for the group. You don't do that in all cases, and it's a really kind of a complex issue. And on the other hand, it's really pretty simple because of that 90% agreement. Because we can, for the most part, get along and agree that, you know what, I like my stuff and I like my life, and I don't want people to take my stuff or take my life. And I'm pretty sure that if I don't take other people's stuff and I don't take their life, and I find other people who agree with that mentality and we form a little group, that we can all keep our stuff and keep our lives, at least to the extent that somebody violates those rules, and then we punish them. It's not that hard. And, where do you get your morality from if God's the author of morality and we got all this and the 10 Commandments and God said this and blah, blah. It's a crock. Kind of taking a step off from that view. Consider this idea, and that is that everybody who claims that they got their morality from, let's say, the Bible, that the 10 Commandments that came from God defined morality, they still had to make a decision about whether or not they agreed with those 10 Commandments. Because you could have another set of 10 Commandments from, let's say, an evil deity, although I'd claim that they're already worshiping an evil deity, that said something else. And it's still up to the individual to say, I choose the God that has these commandments as a moral code over the one that has these. So they've made a conscious choice, and what they're doing is saying, yes, this particular God is consistent with the morality that I like, and therefore I will abide by his commands. I mean, that's the truth of it. Nobody sits around and says, well, God said I must do this, so I'm going to do it.
Another very common thing you'll hear from Christians, because they can try to justify that by saying, well, I believe that this God is the right God for other reasons, and having reached that conclusion, now I'm buying into his moral code.
Right.
But that leaves the entire question of whether a moral code could come from a God, whether he exists or not, right? Whether he's the real God or not. And the answer appears to be no. The question is, this has been posed by philosophers throughout history, for any particular moral rule, you have to ask, is that rule moral because the God says it's moral, or is it moral unto itself and the God wants us to follow it because it is moral unto itself? And neither answer to that question is satisfactory as far as Christian style divine command theory. If the God simply says, here's a moral and I say you will follow this, he's just making it up. And that same God tomorrow could say, hey, from now on I'm going to say there's nothing wrong with murder. Or in fact, that murder is a fine thing and everybody should do it. There would be nothing stopping the God from taking those steps. Or if, on the other hand, the God wants us to follow those moral rules because those moral rules are moral unto themselves, then those moral rules are moral unto themselves, and there are things we can figure out on our own, and we don't need the God to make them moral. They're already moral.
Yeah, God is reduced to being a messenger boy.
Right. Now, the next step in this is, of course, Christians will then argue, but God doesn't just make up the moral rules. The morals are moral because God says so, but he doesn't make them up. He says that those things are moral because those things come from his nature. and his nature is only what it is, and it couldn't be anything different. And so he's not simply making stuff up when he gives us moral rules.
And everybody who says that should look up the word tautology.
Yeah, the problem with that is all that response does is push the question back one step. Okay, fine, so the morals come from the God's nature. Where did the God get his nature? If the God created himself and decided what his own nature was going to be, why then those moral rules that come from his nature are every bit as made up as they were before. Or, on the other hand, if the God is not responsible for his own nature, then the God is not the author of morality. Whatever is responsible for God's nature is the author of morality. And every single possible answer to this question leaves the God out of the picture. So,
you want to know why this is all so puzzling and confusing? And it's because your ancestors decided to invent a God that was logically impossible and absolutely absurd. Rather than sticking with, the gods of animism or this pantheon of gods where each was, supreme in its own bailiwick, they said, yeah, let's create this one God that's everything, that's transcendent, that's just so damn confusing it defies common sense and reason. That's why. And that's why you get into these infinite regresses and circular reasoning and just patently absurd notions about an infinite God. It's stupid.
Yeah. Anyway.
But, it sure seems like an answer. God did it. Wow, that's the best answer I could have ever heard of. As a reminder, since I mentioned that we saw Karen as a visitor at Threadgill's, we do go to Threadgill's after the show. It's down Riverside. The show's over at 6 o'clock. We normally get there at 6:30. Any atheist or atheist-friendly people are welcome to join us. Anybody who's watching the show who wants to come down and have a pleasant, enjoyable conversation, meet some of the ACA folks, please come on down. You're welcome. Let's go on and take some more calls. We got quite a few lined up. Chris, how you doing?
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Hi.
I had a suggestion for the timing of the show. I was thinking that we could get more out of it as far as the city goes if it was on between 3:30 and about 4:30 after school, when parents aren't home to turn it off or get a kid away from there, and it would open up their mind to see something outside of. I think on Sundays, the very children that aren't allowed to see this show would get the most out of it.
You may have a point. Although I kind of, in my mind, like the fact that if some kid is actually flipping through on Sunday and comes across this show, and mom and dad are in the house, that mom and dad are all of a sudden stuck answering really difficult questions.
Yeah, I just doubt that the right people that need to be answering those questions are going to bother.
I do like the idea, though. I'd like us to be doing shows about reason all the time, covering a wide variety of topics. I don't particularly like the idea of specifically targeting kids when they're vulnerable. It comes off as potentially
We recently saw
sleazy.
Jesus Camp, and I don't think any of us are in the mood to jump onto the let's indoctrinate the children bandwagon.
Yeah. Granted, I'd make the argument that I'm freeing them from indoctrination, but I don't know that anybody would really see it that way.
Yeah.
Since we're on a subject about kids, there was a mother and child that called in earlier. I wanted to bring up a point that there's a new show out called Ugly Betty that is being protested by the religious right because there is a young person on there who seems to be of a gay orientation.
Oh no!
And, what are your thoughts about that?
I'm completely unsurprised.
Those Christian people are crazy.
Yeah, it's like these kids don't exist. Somehow people get to 18 and then all of a sudden it's just they start putting on Carmen Miranda albums or whatever. But it's pretty funny that people want to pretend that children like this don't exist.
Yeah, I have a little bit more response than that. I think that every time you see some religious group up in arms about something, what that is really about is fundraising.
Well,
right?
That's a possibility.
They've got
about your
these issues.
dinner thing, I was wondering if you guys had like communion wafer nachos.
Who, us?
Communion wafer nachos?
Why would we have such a thing? How about just
That'd
plain
be-
old nachos? They
that would
taste the
just be
same
awesome.
and they're good for you.
I think I would definitely come if you had communion wafer nachos.
Well, we'll think about it, I guess.
Maybe you should make those nachos and
Wouldn't
bring them.
Wouldn't we have to have something like a communion in order to have such things?
Well, isn't it a communion of sorts?
I don't know. What are we communing with?
Sure, by the strictest definition.
Each other.
We're communing with each other.
Exactly.
The problem is,
okay,
if
guys,
you put the
thanks for the
crosses
show.
on them, they're only upside down depending on how you look at them.
You guys put on a great show. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I mentioned that because we were talking about symbols, and next week, being the Halloween show, and Ashley will be here joining us. For those of you who haven't seen Ashley in a while, be sure and tune in. I'm bringing a couple special things because they're on Halloween, but I also wanted to talk a little bit about symbols next week. And one of the things that caught me as patently absurd is this idea of a pinnacle. And I'll just draw one really quickly. I don't know if anybody can see that on a close-up. See, this is like, we've probably all seen the drawings where these two top bits become horns, and this becomes like, the beard of the goat.
That looks way more like a fox than a goat, though.
In any case, the claim is that it's upside down, and that it should be like this, and it looks different. But what about? Oh, now it's upside down again. Oh, now it's right side up. It's five-sided symmetry, you dolts. It doesn't have any magic power. But we'll hit on some of that next week because I found it amusing. Somebody called in, they evidently had a symbol like that on their ring a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and were being accosted by Christians, which we found kind of absurd. But
all these issues that particularly the religious right, all the issues that they raise that get them all up in arms, that start their letter writing campaigns, are they're just ways for the leaders of the churches to whip their followers into a frenzy so they'll cough up cash.
Yeah.
So, you don't like, here's an issue that we're all going to agree this is evil. So now cough up your cash and we'll fight to solve that. Well, gee, in the course of fighting to solve that problem, some people are going to get employed to do the work of fighting that problem. And those people are living off the money that gets donated. Those people then are in a position to whip up the next issue to be in a frenzy over so they can keep getting paid. That's what that's about.
It kind of bugs me, and I find it amusing a little bit. You've got basically a group of people who are all pissed off about another group of people who aren't going to be breeding and filling up the population for the most part. Instead of, in our case, we should be more pissed off that there are a whole bunch of stupid people breeding and filling up the population with more stupid people. They're indoctrinating them into their myopic little worldview of and perpetuating this cycle forever. And now they're trying to push it into the schools in various forms, and we need Bible courses and creation courses, and thankfully reason seems to keep prevailing, although we're a little slow to make sure that it does sometimes, to push this out. I'm sick of people, the scientific method should be taught in school. Skepticism and critical thinking should be taught in school. We should be teaching kids how to think more than what to think. And I'm completely fine with, pushing some educational dogma down their throats early on. You've got to get the basics in there, as long as the basics are 2 + 2 = 4, and not God created the world in 6 days. And that's just, I watched some films from the 50s on the internet. There's places where you can go watch them, and it's like, Mom does the work in the kitchen and cooks the meal. And I was just like, man, if I lived back in those days, and it wasn't that long ago, but I mean, if I'd been doing a show like this then, wow. So we've come a long way, and we're making progress, but we got a lot to do. And it seems that kids seem to be the #1 target between Jesus Camp and public schools and other stuff like that. And it just drives me crazy, which I guess is a little ironic, because Christians would love to say that atheists, because they don't believe in God and they're secular humanists are all about the human and the self, that I must therefore be a selfish person with no consideration for anybody else. That I must come first. I must be the most important thing, and that it's patently absurd that I might possibly be concerned about or love or care for anybody else. So I guess I'm a bit of a dilemma to those folks.
Me too.
Oh, no, wait, I'm not a dilemma. I'm a liar who's working for Satan. They don't believe me. Doesn't matter how reasonable I am. If you're nuts, you're nuts.
All right, let's go on to another call.
We got Phil. How you doing?
Hi, guys. How y'all doing?
Hi, Phil.
Good.
Good. Listen, I don't know if y'all have heard the story about this assistant director for the White House Office of Faith-Based Initiatives.
Yep.
So
Go ahead.
I guess
Spell it out for our viewers.
I beg your pardon?
Go ahead and tell everybody what that is.
Well, apparently this gentleman was an assistant director for this White House Office of Faith-Based Initiatives, and this office is apparently a clearinghouse for taxpayer dollars to send out to these various churches that are apparently do-gooders, and they're helping people get off alcohol, and they're doing other goody stuff based on Christianity, apparently. And this guy basically, I guess he quit, and then sometime later he wrote this book basically saying that the White House doesn't care about these guys. As soon as folks like Jerry Falwell and Pat Robertson, I guess this guy named Dobson, as soon as they leave the Oval Office, you got Karl Rove and Dick Cheney calling them fanatics and idiots. And so I guess it's just bringing to light a truism that I guess all three of us know, that number one, the White House Office on Faith-Based Initiative is a sham. There's no reason in the world why they should be handing out taxpayers' money to these churches. And, the White House is a bunch of hypocrites when it comes to religion. They tell these people all these good things during election time, and I think the Christianity community is starting to wake up and smell the coffee that these guys are just BSing them to get their votes and get their dollars. And I just wanted to see what your take on that was.
You should listen to the audio from yesterday's nonprofit show.
Apparently that's on the internet, and I've got a dial-up, so it's different.
Yeah, it would take a while. It's about 27 minutes.
I've seen this guy interviewed, I think, on Democracy Now!, and I think he was also on Air America.
Russell talked about it yesterday, and we discussed it a little bit.
Did you?
Yeah, okay. What I said yesterday was that I don't find it surprising at all to find out that perhaps elements of the government have been lying to the religious right in order to get their votes, because they constantly make promises that they know they can't keep, and so it doesn't surprise me that behind the scenes they might be calling, Robertson and Falwell and Dobson nuts, fanatics, whatever.
Well, everybody else does.
Yeah, I called Falwell all kinds of stuff. But anyway, the point Russell made was that in the end it may not actually matter, because even though they aren't giving them everything they want, they are getting some of the things they want, including, a fairly well stacked Supreme Court. You've also got the faith-based initiatives. If churches and church organizations are getting preferential treatment by the government, something which is blatantly unconstitutional, just thought I'd say that. If that's happening, then they're still getting what they want. It doesn't matter that they're being lied to. It's, to them, it's, okay, so you called me a fanatic, big deal. I'm still getting what I want out of it, and God's going to have the last laugh in the end anyway. So I don't know that there's any real win to be had here, although I do like the fact that this is coming out, and maybe there are enough Christians who, let's discount the heads of these organizations. Let's toss Falwell and everybody else aside. Maybe there are enough real Christians out there with enough common sense and self-respect and decency to say, you know what, I'm not going to keep throwing my vote to these guys who are making fun of me, even if I get what I want. I'm going to teach them a lesson. Will it happen? I don't know.
Well, what I would hope that happened was that, I know that Pat Robertson, I think at least a couple of his churches did, in fact, receive several $1 million out of this office, and apparently a lot of smaller, less recognizable churches didn't get any money. But what I hoped would happen was that, let's say, a Muslim community would come together and say, hey, we do good stuff too, but you're not giving us any money. And you can bet your bottom dollar George Bush and his crowd wouldn't give a penny to a Muslim organization. At least that's my opinion, because they've basically been demonized, with this war on terror stuff going on. So I just kind of want to let it go at that, and hey, wish y'all a good day.
All right, thanks a lot, Phil.
Yeah, to me, that whole thing, I agree. I wouldn't be at all surprised if there were a number, even a large number of people in the administration who were simply cynically taking advantage of the religious right to get votes. But apart from that, this whole thing strikes me as very much like the perennial back and forth debate about whether our president is a moron or a genius. There's evidence in all kinds of different directions, and plenty of fodder for arguments about it. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. What matters is what the government is actually doing, right? Is it constitutional? Is it unconstitutional? Is it good for our nation? Is it not good for our nation? And whether or not there are people in the administration who are saying to one another that Jerry Falwell is a lunatic, doesn't really matter to me. I care what they're actually doing.
Yeah, I don't know. We talked a lot about lip service and whether or not somebody. One of the things that comes up from time to time in conversations is, well, do you really think that George Bush is a true Christian? I don't care. I don't know. I don't know what a true Christian is. You can't define it. Every Christian's going to define it a little bit differently. I don't care if he's a true Christian, a false Christian, a Satan worshiper, a reptile. What? It doesn't matter. I throw that in for my friends who like the Alex Jones stuff, but it doesn't matter. What matters is what is he doing, and to say the same thing with regard to belief. It doesn't matter what you believe. All right, it does matter. I think it's important personally, and would like to see everybody have beliefs that are, true. But what matters is what you do with those beliefs, what actions you take on behalf of those beliefs. That's the more important thing.
Yeah.
Let's go on to Jay. How you doing?
Well, y'all hit on what I was going to talk about a little bit, Christianity and politics.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so sick and tired of hearing people running, I'm this, I'm that, I believe in this, and then God, they're nothing but a bunch of hypocrites and BSers. Because if there's laws on the book, you got Perry that's sitting there with jumping down Kinky Friedman, how he misrepresented himself that night in that speech and made that being a candidate running for the governor made him, it's all cheap and all that stuff like that. Well, what was he complaining about when he sit there? He himself broke the law when he'd been caught speeding several times and used his governor's office to get out of tickets and all this. Hey, I uphold this, I uphold the laws. Well, that's a lie and BS, and if you're a good Christian, you're not going to lie. So I'm really wondering about all these people that I consider what I say are hypocrites. What if an openly atheist would start running for politics and say, hey, I'm going to run an office on honesty, not according to what you think, and see what really would happen once. You got libertarians out there, so maybe some of y'all would want to get there and say, hey, I'm going to run for mayor person or city council. I'm openly an atheist, and really bring it. And let's see how...
I'd really like to see something like that, but we've already seen what would happen because there are people who aren't atheists who are being accused of being atheists. There's a guy running for the Sixth Circuit up...
that might be right, I don't know.
Anyway, who was accused of being an atheist, who thought the Bible was, myth and fantasy, and that accusation was tossed out as a negative thing, and the Texas GOP group basically said that we wouldn't be surprised to see him cling to his out-of-touch atheistic beliefs and be unable to uphold Texas law. Something like that was their quote. And of course, the candidate has denied that he was an atheist, and which basically turned out to be a huge success for the Republicans in this case, because now he's probably not going to get votes from atheistic Democrats, because the real question isn't are you or aren't you an atheist. It's the real question is, why does that matter? It's not supposed to be any religious test for office. And if you want to come out and make an accusation that somebody's an atheist, the correct response is, so? It doesn't matter. Well, it's none of your business. It's completely irrelevant to the issue. But the fact that they're going to toss it around as a pejorative, as some kind of attack plan, shows us what would happen if somebody like me were to run for office, because I would say I'm an atheist, and I would say I believe that the Bible is a bunch of myth and fantasy, and that's just not going to go over well. I am out of touch with the general population.
Well, the general population now has a number of very good books to read on the subject, and maybe the general public will get more in touch with us over time.
Yeah.
No, but my point would be this way. I'd be more apt to believe you telling me the truth than I would say somebody that sits down that way and spouts to me about the Bible.
Oh, sure.
And I know that's what I'm saying. I mean, because I've been...
But you're part of the exception to the rule.
Yeah, no, it's nice of you to say, like but most people aren't going to react that way at this time. Maybe someday.
But what I'm going to say, too, is because I'm going to go back on something real differently, too. Everybody jumped on Foley, on this guy that's sitting there finally come out and said that he was a gay person. And that he's supposed to be a pedophile. These kids were 16, 17, 18 years old. That's young adults to me, and they know better what's going on in this day and time. They weren't raised like they were 50 years ago in the shadows in the dark and not knowing anything. I don't consider him a pedophile. You have to be in the gay community to understand. He was not, I don't think if he's anything, he's what we consider a chicken hawk.
But what you think about it, though, is not really relevant. What matters is what the law is, and legally, those are underage people, and so we have a guy in government who is predating underage kids. I mean, you might think, well, maybe that law should be changed. Doesn't change the legality of the situation.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that pedophile is the best word or label to stick to him, but the fact remains is that he had inappropriate correspondence with young boys who were underage.
But that's not actually committing a crime or sex with them like what you see right now. That's
he committed a crime
in the straight community where they're actually having a physical act of sex with some of these kids.
I think that investigation is still going on. We don't know exactly what all went on.
Well, that young kid, the kid that was the one that they brought up that he had been involved with, that the one they caught the last letter, he said there was nothing physical between it. It was just the correspondence of the letters.
Yeah, that's the kid that came forward, right?
That's the one that came forward and told me. That's what I'm understanding.
Foley himself didn't come forward about the inappropriate contact from his priest until after he got caught, and that's like, 30, 40 years since it happened. So just because nobody has said yet, I don't want to sit here accusing Foley of anything either. We don't know. It is too soon to say exactly how far that went. What we can say for sure, about the only thing we can say for sure, is he has been caught in criminal activities.
Writing letters.
That's the way it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's more interesting to me was the cover-up anyway.
But anyway, that's what I'm going to say. But anyway, I'm still curious to see why we can't, or in the community, there is not an open atheist to run for office.
Because we're too small part of the population.
And also, by the way, we wouldn't be the people to talk to, at least certainly not on our show. The Atheist Community of Austin is not a political organization. We can't actually take partisan sides. And I'm pretty sure that means that as an organization, we couldn't front a candidate.
No,
but,
we couldn't.
But any of us could decide to do it on our own. That's a separate thing. So, but anyway.
All right.
Maybe someday.
All right. Thanks a lot, Jay. Appreciate it. We got Don. How you doing?
How you fellas doing?
Great.
Good. I haven't talked to you for quite a while, and I just happened to have some time, and I was looking. Let me turn my television off. Okay. And I was just interested. You guys seem to be pretty confident in your intellect. And are you scientists? Are either of you scientists?
Nope.
No.
Okay.
But I have read the works of some scientists, and I do know a few scientists. But
we do make it our business to stay informed.
Okay, so you believe. What is your background degree-wise? I'm not just saying that important, but I just want to know for my own benefit.
I don't know why it's particularly relevant, but I don't have any degree.
Okay. What about you?
No, me neither.
You don't have any?
Do you?
Oh, yes, I have.
And what's yours?
And computer programming. Technology.
Okay.
Cool.
But what I would like to ask is, what scientific proof do you give concerning how the Earth came into being?
See, here's the thing. Even if there was no scientific answer, no explanation at all, that doesn't mean that a God did it.
No, but I say you say you believe what you believe because.
What I can tell you is that that science, as far as I can tell, continually provides us with the best explanation of reality. It continually reproves itself. It's the only reliable method for determining fantasy from reality.
Well, how has science proven, what science has proven how creation came about?
Creation. Well, there's a loaded word. What exactly are you talking about?
how the
abiogenesis?
earth
Are you
and how
talking
we
about
came into it.
evolution from common descent?
The Big
Are you
Bang?
talking about the Big Bang? I mean, there's tons of subjects in there.
Is that scientific or theory?
Which one?
I'm asking you, what do
No,
you think
pick
it is?
any of
scientific or
those
theory?
specific topics.
You can't
and we'll be
say
happy to answer.
you can't say everything. You can't do everything and then say, is that scientific? We asked, were you talking about the Big Bang? Were you talking about abiogenesis? Were you
I'm talking
about
about the Big Bang. Is that scientific?
Sure.
How
Is
has
it
been
is it proved to an absolute certainty? No, but nothing else is either.
If it's not able to be duplicated, is it really science?
Of course it is.
Yes.
Well, that's not what the scientists say.
No.
Yes, it is.
Okay, well, tell me one science that says if you can't prove this,
Let me try to.
true science.
I'll give you an example.
Okay.
Pluto, poor little Pluto that got demoted from being a planet recently, right? Was discovered, I don't know what year, less than 200 years ago. Do you know how long it takes Pluto to make an orbit?
Well, I'm sure that there's some calculations because Pluto can be seen and observed.
Yeah, the point is, Pluto has never been observed to make a complete orbit because we haven't known about it that long. Does that mean, because we have not actually seen Pluto make an orbit, that it doesn't?
Well, see, that's my point. Just
Is it?
because
So you
have
think
not
Pluto
seen
does
God
not? You think
does
it's
not mean
not
that he doesn't
scientifically
exist.
plausible to say that Pluto orbits the sun if we haven't actually observed it making a complete orbit?
No. Do you say that it does?
I think it is scientifically appropriate to say Pluto orbits the sun. Yes, I do.
Okay.
The reason is that all the underlying science, that all the understanding of what makes objects orbit the sun, right? All that stuff about gravitation and stuff, that's all known. And
Okay.
so we're extrapolating from known things
Okay,
about
extrapolation.
things that have not been observed. Same
Extrapolation.
thing goes for the Big Bang. There's
No,
plenty
can it-
that we do know for a fact, and extrapolating from that, the quite reasonable scientific conclusion is that there was this Big Bang event.
Okay, now how do they extrapolate the Big Bang?
I don't know, sir. Let's cut away from science for a second. What is the alternative? An ancient book written by a bunch of holy men in the desert 2,000 years ago?
Well, it
That's
says,
the alternative?
Hey, you put the word desert in there.
Dude, answer the question.
Wait a
Is
minute.
that what you're offering?
Look, I'm not going to answer a question that's not a legitimate question. You said 2,000 years ago in the desert, the book was
okay,
written
regardless.
by people
In
that
the
as I
Middle
said-
East, roughly 2,000 years ago. Now answer the freaking question.
As I said,
You're going to sit here and corner us on science when, in fact, all you've got to offer in exchange is this ridiculous ancient book.
which is why at the beginning of the conversation, when you started down this blatantly obvious path, I explained that even if we had no explanation, even if there was no science to back it up, that doesn't make any counter explanation any more realistic.
But you-
the God
you said
hypothesis
fact.
has to have evidence to support itself. It doesn't stand in the absence of other theories.
Well, that's ridiculous what you just said. That's,
No,
that's
it's
but-
fact. Sorry. Goodbye. If you think that the default position is to believe until we can prove it wrong, you're an idiot. Sorry, don't care what degree you have.
That ain't
That's
how it
the
works, sir.
stupidest thing in the world. And using that same logic, then you must believe everything. You must believe in a teapot orbiting Mars. You must believe in fairies, pixies, unicorns, dragons, demons, angels, and every other preposterous
maybe
thing.
he does.
Because you can't prove them wrong, and that's a stupid way about going around living your life. And you don't deserve any more time on the show, so we'll go to Dave. How you doing, Dave?
Hey guys, how you doing? Wow, that was fun.
Yeah, it was.
It was kind of. Anyway, I just want to give you an update on the like 3 callers ago. The guy that was talking about David Quo's book.
Yeah.
There's a Raw Story article that says GOP losing religious base to Democrats. So they are actually the sort of like street level Christians actually are kind of walking away from being lied to and called names.
Yeah, we're obviously not going to know until an election, and obviously we don't want to get overly political here, but we're obviously not going to know until an election exactly how much effect it has. So.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, I just wanted to give you an update on that. Hey, listen, let me just ask a quick question, because Jeff, you mentioned a minute ago that the ACA is not a religious organization.
I said not a political organization.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
But it's not a religious
definitely not a religious
organization
organization, a political organization. We're being attacked by religious organizations, so I think we need to get political, don't you?
See, the thing is, we are allowed.
The Atheist Community of Austin is a particular kind of nonprofit organization which cannot be involved in partisan politics. We can be involved in issues.
Yeah, we can discuss any issue.
That's perfectly fine.
So it's a charter thing of some kind. I got you.
If for example, the ACA got together as part of policy, and we haven't specifically done this, we are working on some things along these lines, but if, for example, the ACA got together and said that as an organization, we are going to support a woman's right to choose. Now, we haven't done this. I'm just using it hypothetically.
Right.
Then we could come out on that issue, both on this show and other things. And many of us have come out independently as being very supportive of a woman's right to choose, pro-choice. But not every ACA member is. Not every atheist is. We talked a lot about. Atheist is a broad-based term that simply just means a lack of belief in a God, and you can be an atheist, and technically, and still have all kinds of other silly beliefs about, perhaps reincarnation if you're an atheistic Buddhist, that follows the reincarnation religious element of that.
Right.
So yeah, it's a kind of a broad thing. It's kind of a misnomer, really, to call it the Atheist Community of Austin, the Atheist Experience, because in general we're more than that. We're really talking about kind of broader philosophical. I don't know that anybody in the ACA believes in any supernatural thing.
We have had some people wander in and out that have had some other peripheral.
It's not a requirement for membership. The only ACA requirement for membership really is that you don't have a belief in a God, since that's the definition of atheist. But what else do you have, Dave?
That's it. I just didn't realize it was I thought it was just kind of a stance, not a charter issue. But
it's part of nonprofit.
When he says atheist organizations are basically the front line against, in the fight against theocracy, which we're staring down the muzzle of.
Do you know the name of the organization that has the woman who's the I can't think of the term. The person who talks to people in Congress.
She's a lobbyist?
Lobbyist. There's an atheist lobbyist,
Oh, no, I didn't know that. No, that's great. I didn't know that.
I don't know which organization she's with, though. I don't know if it's American Atheist or if it's...
I'm betting if you plug the words atheist lobbyist into a search engine. Somebody knows?
No.
Nobody knows. If you plug the words atheist lobbyist into a search engine, you'll get some info.
Okay, great. I'll look that up. Real quick, Jeff, how come every show you wear the dinosaur shirt? I need to know.
It's just become a habit now. That's all.
Okay, I thought it was some kind of...
Jeff only has one shirt. we don't pay him to do the show, so...
Actually, I have exactly 30, and I don't wash them until I've worn them all. And this one just happens to fall on show day.
Okay. All right, thanks a lot.
The once-a-month show thing. See, somebody's actually going to believe that, because they wouldn't have caught on earlier, because I didn't. But
take care, guys.
Thanks a lot, Dave.
I did consider wearing something different today, but I said, oh no, what the hell.
Plus, it was really stupid of me to say you only have one shirt when you're actually wearing two at the same time right now. But, we've got, is it David?
Yeah.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. I wanted to ask you guys, first let me thank you for all the years of time that you've spent, Jeff especially. I know that you've been on a long time, and thank you for everything. But I want to play devil's advocate. I want to suggest that maybe organized...
I thought we were the devil's advocate.
Pardon me?
I thought we were the devil's advocate.
No, we don't believe in him either.
Oh, that's right. I get confused. As, some of these accusations just kind of sink in.
We can always use help, but thinking broadly. But what do you think of the idea that organized religion is a good idea to help keep people in check? Because so many people without it may do wrong.
What kind of check are we talking about? That's my first question.
Well, I guess...
I'm in favor of laws and law enforcement,
right?
Because that's keeping people in check in a way that I think is important, right?
I
way
agree.
does religion keep people in check? That's important.
Well, I just think that there are a large group of people out there that law is not the thing that keeps them in check.
And you think religion does?
I think.
Do you have some evidence of this?
No, I think that it's just because of what I hear as far as maybe prisoners who are coming around, or teenagers that I talk to, and just wondering.
Well, the evidence is kind of scant, but what little evidence there is, it seems to fly in the face of the idea that religion makes people more, say, law-abiding.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you have any resources I might look at?
Oh boy, that I can give you a direct link to? No. Wait a minute.
The best evidence that I've seen, and it's sketchy, is that moral behavior is pretty much the same across the board, regardless of whether you're religious or irreligious or what religion you happen to be a part of. I know religioustolerance.org and adherence.org have both looked into bits and pieces of this. There's a study that we have a link to from our site, but it may not be anywhere easy to find, on whether or not religiosity of a country, how it correlates with its societal health on a whole bunch of different factors. That one's from the Journal of Religious Studies. The thing is that for those people who do believe that their religion keeps them moral, that where they seriously believe that if they were to discover that there is no God, that they would then have no reason to behave properly and would run around killing and maiming and raping and whatever else. I want churches to stay around forever to keep those people in until we can find a better place to lock them up.
Amen. Yeah, I think that's what I'm thinking, is that there is a small group of people that we are stopping from doing harm with organized religion.
Yeah, there may be, but they're sociopaths, and the only reason that they're not, if the only reason you're not out killing is because you think there's some guy watching you and keeping a tally on all the times you masturbate, and all the times you shoplift, and all the times you help the old lady walk across the street, and you're going to get some kind of judgment when your life's over. Keep going to church until we can find a better place to put you.
I think they call that Roman Catholicism, but okay. Well, thanks a lot, guys, and keep it up.
Sure, thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Just to give a little bit more backup here, you mentioned the study of societal dysfunction related to religiosity, nation to nation. Just a couple of other things. I'm not going to read all the statistics from this because it would take up a bunch of time. But the Barna Group, which is a Christian organization that compiles statistics, did a study which found that Christians were no more moral than non-Christians, and listed a bunch of questions and how born-again Christians and non-Christians answered those questions. Of course, that doesn't pick out atheists. Then there are the Federal Bureau of Prison Statistics. Again, this is not conclusive evidence at all. These are bits and pieces of evidence. According to the Federal Bureau of Prisons, atheists appear less frequently in federal prison than they do in the general public, which would indicate the opposite. Now, of course, it's likely that a lot of people are merely pretending to be religious in order to get better treatment in prison and things like that. That's why this cannot be considered conclusive.
Finding Jesus is the most impressive thing to a parole board.
But be that as it may, there is no evidence that I'm aware of anywhere that shows that more religion makes people more behave better.
Yeah,
none whatsoever.
You line up all the world's religions, you're pretty much going to find the same breakdown of good people versus bad people, regardless of what religion they believe or how much they believe it, and et cetera. I mean, how many, you've got these people. I think, like, for example, one could say that Fred Phelps is definitely a true Christian and believes it incredibly strongly. I don't think anybody could doubt his sincerity of his belief. And I'd say he's one of the most repugnant, socially immoral people I can think of. Not that he's doing anything particularly illegal, because he works within the law, but the hatred that he promotes and the ideas that underlie all of his actions, they're vile, hideous.
Now,
And I don't know why it takes an atheist to point this out. If religious people are more moral, certainly there should be religious people pointing this out all the time
Glass
at a
houses.
frequency of about, 80% more often than I do. But they're not.
that's glass houses, man.
Yeah.
Because
I can't-
religious people in general are afraid to point fingers at other religious people and their motivations because
Because if a liberal
that would
Christian goes
begin-
after Fred Phelps' response is to use the same holy book that liberal Christian's using.
Yeah.
And he knows that goes right against what he'd like to promote.
Yeah, I want to add one more thing to
Sure.
our response to the last caller. If you change that question, that statement somewhat from religion helps keep people in check to does it help manipulate people? There, I think you may be onto something. There's a lot of evidence that if you can get a bunch of people to follow a particular religion, you can use that religion as a hook to lead them around by the nose. There's a lot of evidence of that, but that's not the same kind of socially positive thing that I think you were going for.
All right, we got Chuck. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing all right, thanks. How are y'all?
Good.
What's up, Chuck?
Going back to the subject of the atheist lobbyist, I'm wondering if y'all were trying to think of Toni Van Pelt.
No, this is a woman.
Yeah, Toni Van Pelt's a woman.
Oh, then yes, I bet we were, and I'm just stupid.
Not a Y, I guess, at the end.
Thank you.
Okay.
What organization is she with?
She's with Center for Inquiry, the D.C. Public Policy Office.
Aha, yeah,
That is
Council for
not the
Secular
same-
Humanism.
That's not the same person I'm thinking of.
It's not?
No.
Okay. Oh,
Maybe
good.
there's
Good
two,
to know that maybe there's
or
more
maybe
than
I'm
one.
just wrong. But I didn't think the person I'm thinking of. I didn't think that she was with the Council for Secular Humanism.
I don't know. We'll have to talk
That
to
would be
Jeff.
a secular humanist lobbyist, not an atheist lobbyist, technically.
Well.
Okay.
Homework for everyone.
Yeah, sounds good. But she did
For next week,
succeed
everybody
in
go
getting
out
a
and find out who the
religious-oriented bill
atheist
killed
lobbyist
in
is.
committee earlier this
What
year.
was that?
She did succeed in getting a religiously oriented bill killed in committee earlier this year. So
Well, good.
we're there and we're making some small headway. So
Yep.
I talk bad about religion, and partly because it's fun, and partly because it needs to be said. This isn't just. Trust me, I'm happy and enjoying life, and I'm optimistic about the future. This isn't just an ex-Christian spewing venom because it happens to bother me. By the way, we just got the Secular Coalition for America, the lobbyist we were talking about, is Lori Lipman Brown, and that's why I didn't recognize the Toni name. So there were two lobbyists. But the reason that I tend to go after religions is because I think it needs to be done, because this idea that faith is a virtue, that faith is a good way, a good tool for determining what you should believe, is just false. I mean, it's false and stupid and dangerous. Like the caller we had earlier, yes, you can sound like you're being eminently reasonable. That since we can't prove it, this other possibility is equally plausible. No, it's not equally plausible. There may be two sides to it from your point of view, but in reality there are millions of sides, and one side has this huge bulk of evidence and fits in with everything else that we know about the natural world, and in one of those other little piles that you happen to prefer, there's no evidence. It's silly, and you got to have faith. No, you don't. You don't have to have a blind acceptance of something just because some ancient book told you to, or because you're uncomfortable with not knowing the answer, so you're going to latch onto the one that feels good. Boy, if we did science that way, we wouldn't have a TV show to talk to people. There's no way we'd be processing signals out to everybody else on the planet. We'd still be banging rocks against shellfish trying to dig out the goodies on the inside and hoping that if we hit it hard enough, the spark might light the fire. It's stupid. You can't operate in a modern society and have faith as a virtue. But anyway, that's rant number 4 today? What else did you have, Chuck?
Oh, that's it. Good show. Enjoyed a lot.
Thanks a lot.
Chuck.
Bye now.
Yeah, I guess I'm in full-on rant mode, but it's all kind of. I mean, it sounds negative to some people, I'm sure, but it's positive. It's so important to know that what you believe is true or is as real as it can possibly be. to make decisions based on reason, rational evidence, and Anyway.
I agree.
I know you.
You're not debating with me, sir.
I know you did. And I wasn't just waiting for the I agree.
I wish you'd
chime
have
in.
let that guy stay on the line a little longer, though, because he was fun to play with.
Oh, if he was that fun, he'd call back. Speaking of which, we got about 5 minutes left in the show. We are going to be going to Threadgills after the show. I know the guys in the booth been itching for me to say it again. For all of the entertaining and helpful viewers out there, atheists or atheist friendly, anybody who wants to come down and join us, as long as you're not coming down to preach. Threadgills is on Riverside. We'll be there around 6:30. I am going to dinner this week. I almost avoided it a couple weeks, but I'll be there. And with 5 minutes left in the show, we'll take a couple more calls. Phone number will be back up in a minute for those of you in Austin. Rich, how you doing?
Hey guys, it's Rich again.
Hey.
How you guys doing? Long time no talk to.
Yeah, actually, I got an ICQ from you the other day, but by the time I got around to responding, I'd already lost it.
Oh, that's all right. Don't worry about it. I figured I'd call in and kind of comment on what I think the caller before this last one had mentioned about. It was something along the lines of how religion keeps people in check.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I have some personal experience with that myself. Let me preface everything by saying I'm not a psychopath.
Yeah, I know Rich. I can vouch for him. He's not a psychopath as far as I know.
But religion, when I was younger, the dogma that was taught in the churches that I had attended was very much embedded in my brain, in my soul, so to speak, to the point where I really did feel like if there weren't laws, that religion really did hold me in check. Now,
but there are laws.
Sure, but those laws meant nothing to me because I had some mental problems.
Okay, I take it back. Rich might be a sociopath.
Well, I guess what I'm getting at is what I found was I really didn't need religion or the belief in a God. What I really needed was some psychological help, which I got.
Well, we mentioned, you talked about religious dogma. And
right.
Earlier today, we talked about those cases where religion is needed to keep somebody in check. And
right.
also earlier today, I mentioned about how I wasn't necessarily opposed to some scientific dogma as a teaching tool in order to get a foundation built, when you're teaching kids. The point is that once you get that foundation built, at some point you can go back and justify that foundation. We don't start teaching kids at the beginning. We teach kids starting in the middle. We teach them known things, build off of that, and then go back and show them why those known things are known,
right.
To the extent that they can be. Now, Daniel Dennett and others have asked this question about religion. His position is that people believe in belief more than they believe in, for example, the God that they're talking about. But perhaps religion is a necessity in society where it serves the purpose of teaching from the middle. And Dennett's conclusion, I think, if I'm understanding him correctly, which kind of goes along with mine, is no, it's not needed. You can still teach from the middle without lying to people. You can still teach from the middle without building them up on a false foundation, so that when you go back later in their life to teach them how and why things are, you're not pulling the rug out from underneath them so that they fall over, because the stuff you started teaching them at the beginning is untrue. It's unfounded.
Right.
Let's teach them real things. Let's teach them, you can teach good social morals and good ethical behavior from a completely utilitarian standpoint, build on that, and then go back and do the justification part later.
Or through positive psychological understandings also, instead of the dogmas that are taught in churches, which is based on fear.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd like to add that I think that it's, just to elaborate on this point, I think it's worse than unnecessary for churches to go around, for religious organizations to go around telling people that morality is based in religion. Because the problem is that no religion on the planet can prove that it is true. Yeah. Not a one of them.
Not one, yeah.
And so what they're doing is they're indoctrinating a bunch of people to believe that because their religion is true, that is why they should behave properly. And it's inevitable that a significant number of their followers over time will come to the realization, hey, maybe this isn't true. Now, I do think it's entirely possible that at the time when someone loses their religion, if the only understanding of morality they've got is what their church pounded into them, then they might have a problem. But that's because the church screwed them up in the first place.
We're out of time. Tune in next week. It'll be Halloween. Ashley will be here. Thanks to all our callers. Email TV@atheist-community.org and join us at Thread, Gills.
Bye, folks.